Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1981 Maple Grove Statutory Public Meeting. As I said before, my name is Andy Reside. I am a Strategic Program and Project Officer with the Business and Technical Support Services of the Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Development Department with the City of Ottawa. Today, I will be here to host the meeting and go through what we call our Zoom protocol for the evening. Braden, next slide, please. First, I'll talk about how you can connect with us, how you can sign into the meeting and fill out a comment sheet when you need to. My coworker, Mike Ostrom, just put in the chat the links for the meeting sign in, and he's going to be putting in the link for the comment sheet as well. If you could take a moment and sign into the meeting, that would be great. This just gives us an official record of who attended the meeting. As well, it will allow us to contact you throughout the steps of the planning process. For example, if there's another meeting or when this goes to planning committee. The comment sheet also provides you the opportunity, if you can't ask a question today or if you think of something at a later time, to fill out this comment sheet, and it goes directly to Stream Shen, who is the planner on the file. He is the lead planner on the file. So please take a moment to sign in, and if you need to fill out the comment sheet or want to fill out the comment sheet, you can do so at any time up to 2 days after the meeting. Great, next slide, please. So as I said, I wanted to go over some of the participation protocol for our Zoom meeting. Normally, we would be holding this in person, so we wouldn't need to talk about how to raise your hand. But now that we have kind of moved to a virtual online function, everyone, as you notice, you are on mute. This does not mean we are trying to stop you from speaking. We are just trying to control the feedback and everything while presentations happen online. But we always have a question and answer period, and this is where this protocol comes into play. To ask your question and to speak, we please ask that you raise your hand virtually. And to do so, and if you want to try it out now, please go ahead. To do so, you click on the Participants tab, and then you click the Raise Hand button. And if you want to try that now, that'd be great, and we'll lower your hand after that. This button also lowers your hand if you want to. For example, if you raise your hand at one point and your question is already answered, you can lower your hand later on. And then at that point, it shows us who has raised their hand and in what order. We then will ask you to unmute your microphone. We will click a button and it will either unmute your microphone or pop up on your screen saying, please unmute your microphone. And then that will be your opportunity to ask your question. After your question, we will mute you again so that the question can be answered, but we will always return to you to ask if your question has been answered satisfactorily or if you got the information you wanted. As always, we can answer questions in English or in French. Alors, si vous voulez demander votre question en votre langue préférée, on peut vous aider. And with that, I will pass it over to Charmaine Forgy, who will be the moderator for the meeting.
Good evening. Actually, good afternoon. Thank you, Andy, for the overview. And I'd like to say good afternoon and welcome everyone to the public meeting for 1981 Maple Grove. As Andy mentioned, my name is Charmaine Forgy, and I have the pleasure of being your moderator this afternoon. And I'm sorry if I say this evening, I'm like programmed to say that. Our session is from 4 o'clock till 5:30. And so at that point, we will hopefully have the opportunity to have answered all of your questions and address them with the different folks that are on the screen today. So I'm just going to go a little bit over doing some introductions of who's on the call today and who will be available for some questions and answers. So we're lucky to have Councillor Gowers with us today. He'll be doing some opening remarks. From city staff, we have, and if they could raise their hand, that would be great. We have Stream, who's the file lead. He's the file planner. I think most of you probably have heard his name before. He's typically the planner for this area. We have Mike, who is our senior transportation engineer, who will be answering anything related to transportation. And then myself, Charmaine Forgy. For the applicant, we have Vincent, who's the planner for Claridge. Could raise your hand, Vincent. We have Greg Winters, who's a planning consultant from Novatech. We have Robert Tran from planning consultant from Novatech, and David Hook, who's a transportation consultant from the IBI group. So thank you for that. And so now I'm going to go over the agenda. Could I have the next slide, please? And so we will have some, as I mentioned, some opening remarks from the councillor. Stream will go through the planning process, and then we'll have turn it over to the applicant and the consultants to talk about the development proposal, and then to the Q&A. And I will remind everyone when we get to the Q&A of how to raise your hand and things like that, but we'll worry about that as we go along. And then we'll have some closing remarks. I hope that makes sense to everyone, and we'll enjoy our time for the next hour and a half. And so now over to Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Charmaine, and thank you, Andy, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today. I'm just looking at the participant list, and it's a really healthy turnout to the meeting today. I see some familiar names. I see John Curry from the Community Voice. So hi, John. And I see Carol Lenz from the Bryanston Gate community, and also Tanya Hine from Stittsville Village Association, and lots of other familiar names from residents as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today. This is I guess an interesting file for a number of reasons. First of all, because of how old it is. It was originally submitted to the city back in May 2018, so before I was even in office as a councillor. And this is the first public meeting now that's been held for this particular proposal. It has not been approved by the city, and this is one of the ways that residents can share feedback, and that residents can hear from the developer, from the applicant, about what they have planned, and also from city staff. The other reason I think this is an interesting development application is because there's a lot of moving pieces particularly around transportation. And I've already heard from a lot of residents about concerns about the Huntmar Maple Grove intersection, as well as the timing and the sequencing for Stittsville Main Street. Stittsville Main Street will eventually connect up north towards the Queensway, and Stittsville Main Street will eventually connect to Maple Grove, but the timing and the sequencing of that is still a bit of a question mark. So we're going to get some more information today. As I often say at these meetings, my job as a councillor is to listen to all the stakeholders. I think it's probably fair to say at the site of 1981 Maple Grove, there will someday eventually be some kind of a development there. As to what exactly it looks like or what it is, that's why events like these are important, to continue to hear from the community about where your concerns are and continue to be able to make tweaks so we can get the best development possible for our community. So I'll turn things back over to Charmaine, and I'll look forward to listening to the presentation from Claridge and from their experts today on the call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for those remarks. And now we'll get to the planning process. And so over to Stream.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Charmaine. Hi, everyone. My name is Stream Shen, and I'm the city planner on the file. Many of you have emailed me questions before. I do try my best to reply to everybody. So feel free to email me any questions or comments. This is a statutory public meeting for a plan of subdivision within the City of Ottawa as required to be held under Section 51(20)(b) of the Planning Act. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the City of Ottawa in respect of the proposed plan of subdivision, you must make a written request to Stream Shen at the City of Ottawa Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Department, 110 Laurier Avenue West, Ottawa, Ontario, K1P1J1. Of course, email is always welcome as well. Next slide, please. So first, I'm going to take everyone to the planning process. Just to familiarize everyone, this site is located at the end of Maple Grove Road. It's surrounded by the Jackson Trail and Bryanston Gate communities to the south, the Fairwinds community to the east, and future development land to the north, east, and west. Next slide, please. In Ontario, planning is a policy-led process. The province sets out provincial policy statements which identify provincial directions on key land use issues, and the city's official plan implements it and bring it down to a local level. On the screen, it shows what we call Schedule B from the city's official plan. So Schedule B is a land use map that designates the urban area of the city into different categories. For example, the blue you see on the screen is designated as urban employment area, and it is protected for employment uses. The purple is a mixed-use center, which permits a mix of uses and acts as a central node for the community it's in. The site itself is located in the city's general urban area, which is planned for residential function and permits a range of housing types, but it is predominantly low-rise in height, and that means 4 stories or lower. Next slide, please. So back in 2002, the city also undertook a more refined planning study for the Kanata West area called the Kanata West Concept Plan. This concept plan laid out the major transportation links for the area. For example, you can see the future Stittsville Main Street extension on the screen here, as well as it also identified this area for residential use. Next slide, please. The city received a lot of comments relating to traffic from residents. So in the next 2 slides, I will give an overview of the current road status surrounding the site. As you could see, Maple Grove, shown in green, runs along the south of the site and is designated as a collector road. Stittsville Main Street extension is planned along the west and north edge of the site and is shown in dotted yellow. Whenever a line is shown as a dotted line, it means that it is to be constructed in the future. Currently, Stittsville Main Street extension is listed as a phase 3 project in the Transportation Master Plan with the estimated construction timeline between 2026 to 2031. Next slide, please. So now that we took a little bit, a quick look at the macro level, then we're kind of zooming in here to the 3 street segments surrounding the subdivision itself. The red represents Maple Grove extension to be constructed by the developer. So right now, as everyone knows, Maple Grove is a rural cross section. This road is located outside of the proposed plan of subdivision, and the developer will be responsible because they have homes fronting onto it, and they need to extend it to allow service connections. What they are responsible for is the asphalt road surface for the entire connection, as well as the urbanization for the north side of the road. And this means things like sidewalk, curbs, and catch basin. Stittsville Main Street will be connected to Maple Grove, so through a bend in the road as part of this application. So the 2 will be connecting. The green in the top is the Stittsville Main Street extension that's located on private property. Half of it is located on this subdivision, and the other half is located on the adjacent 195 Hunmar Drive subdivision to the north. So this segment is also to be completed as part of this application and is to be cost shared by the 2 developers. And they're completing it because it is located within their sites. The last segment I wanted to talk about is the blue on the city right-of-way west of the site. Because it's located on a city right-of-way, this is what we call a development charges project. And the timing, again, based on the Transportation Master Plan currently is between 2026 to 2031. So development charges project is funded by new home construction, and each home being built will help facilitate this segment being completed. And one of the reasons Councillor was saying that the application has been on hold since 2018 is a lot of residents was concerned about the capacity of a Hunmar and Maple Grove, because everyone knows there's a lot of traffic delay in that area. So in speaking with various city staff, this intersection upgrade for Hunmar and Maple Grove has been added as part of the draft 2021 capital budget and is subject to council approval. If it is approved, the tentative schedule to begin construction next year for the intersection upgrade. Next slide, please. So what is a plan of subdivision, the process we're here to talk about today? In the province of Ontario, if you own a large piece of land and you wish to subdivide or sell parts of it to somebody else, you have to go through a planning act exercise called a plan of subdivision. It divides the parcel into lots and blocks for development, together with new streets, park block, and sometimes commercial block and school block. It's meant to facilitate the orderly development of the land. A plan of subdivision is a 2-step process. First, we have draft approval, which establishes the general layout of the subdivision and sets conditions that developer must fulfill. Only once you fulfill all of those conditions, you can reach registration. Things we talk about during the draft approval stage includes road capacity. How do we manage stormwater on site? The sanitary and water main capacity, and whether the proposed development is compatible with the existing community. So it's only once they satisfy all of those conditions, finishes detailed design, have their financial requirements met, can they get to registration. The two steps also coincide with when the developer can sell and close on home. So it's only at draft approval where everything's agreement in principle, they can begin selling the home. And it's at registration, once they satisfy and finalize all of the conditions, can they close, meaning transfer ownership to the future homeowner. Next slide, please. And I think with that, I'm going to transfer the presentation over to Robert Tran, the planner from Novatech Engineering, to talk about the development proposal itself.
Thank you, Stream. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Tran. I am the planner and agent acting on behalf of Claridge. With me is my senior project manager, Greg Winters. Next slide, please. Again, so this is the presentation for the Maple Grove residential subdivision located at 1981 Maple Grove Road in Ottawa, Ontario. Next. So a bit about the subject site context. So the subject site has an area of approximately 7.58 hectares. It's currently semi-open and treed, and it's bound by existing residential to the south and east, as well as surrounding undeveloped areas. Next slide. So these two images provide a bit more visual context in terms of the subject property. So to the left, you'll see an aerial imagery of the subject property, as well as the boundary of the subject site. To the right, you will see the street view looking northwest towards Maple Grove from Alon Street, and this is a street view image. Next. So as Stream mentioned in his slide, the subject site is currently designated as general urban area under the City of Ottawa official plan. It's designated as residential under the Kanata West concept plan, and it's currently zoned as development reserve under the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw. Next slide. As Stream previously mentioned, this is the Kanata West concept plan. It's zoned, the site is currently designated as residential areas A and B on this plan. And the proposed development, which features residential, is in keeping with the policies of this plan. Next slide. So this is the previous development concept by Claridge Homes. So it featured 196 dwelling units and featured a mixture of detached street and back-to-back townhouse dwellings, one future park block, and was organized in a grid street pattern layout as shown on the plan of subdivision in this image here. Next slide. Presently, Claridge Homes is proposing to develop 187 dwelling units. The housing types are still being proposed are still the same. There is one future park block. However, the subject site layout was modified based on city staff comments as well as resident comments regarding transportation. So there's a crescent to the south of the site, and this is to address potential cut-through traffic throughout the site. Next. So this concept plan provides a bit visual context of the unit breakdown. So as previously mentioned, Claridge is proposing to develop 187 dwelling units. So 57 detached dwelling units are proposed in yellow. 104 street townhouse dwellings are shown in orange. 32 back-to-back townhouse dwellings are shown in the red, as well as a series of sidewalk connections are provided throughout the site, which will provide for pedestrian navigation throughout the community. Next. So the next slide shows conceptual elevation renderings of what the detached houses will look like. So these are just two examples provided by Claridge. Next slide. Next slide, please. And these are just two more additional examples of what detached dwellings will look like. And you'll see the variety in style as well as colors. Next slide, please. And these are the conceptual elevation renderings of the street townhouses. Next slide. And lastly, these are the conceptual elevation renderings of the back-to-back townhouses. Thank you. Next.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So what happens next in the process? The city will continue to gather public comments, and we always take any comments up to the point a decision has been made. But I would encourage everyone to email me as soon as possible. Just I have the maximum amount of time to try to resolve any comments with the developers. After that, issues are resolved, a draft plan and condition of approval are finalized, and I will be preparing a report. A decision is then made by my manager with concurrence from the ward councillor. Lastly, a notice of decision is sent to everybody who made a comment. Next, please. And I will turn it back to Charmaine to go through the Q&A session.
Thank you, Stream, and thank you, Robert, for the presentation. Now, before we get to the Q&A, Stream has received some comments and some questions from the community, and I just thought before we get into that, I'd like Stream to review some of the themes that he's already heard. So, sorry, Stream, over to you again, if you can go through the themes.
Sure. Actually, Claridge and Novatech will be going through some of them, and I think I'll jump in whenever we reach a question that require city comments. I think what we'll do is we'll just go over each item by itself. So we'll start off with any. So what happens with construction noise in this case? So Vincent, did you want to answer that question?
Yeah, just trying to, okay.
You're good, Vincent.
Yep, so the construction noise, I mean, we'll be working within the City of Ottawa's noise bylaw guidelines. So typically 7 to 5:30 are regular construction times. So as far as noise, yes, it will be noisy, but we will be doing it within the City of Ottawa's bylaw. And I can talk to the next point about construction dust. We do weekly street sweeping, cleaning, and if it does get any worse or too bad, we will do it twice a week if needed. Blasting, if there is blasting, then we will do pre-blast surveys and install seismic readers around the neighborhood so that we can assure that it's within tolerable ranges. If there's any vibrations that are above the allowed tolerance, then we'll know and we'll stop operations.
Okay, and just to kind of add on to it, all the surrounding homeowner within a vicinity, if blasting is to occur, they will get the pre-blast survey, which will include people coming to your house, asking for your permission to take some picture of your basement and foundation just to create a baseline condition. So in case if there were to be any damage, they have something to compare it to. And then from there on, you will be able to file claims. So I'll take the next couple questions. The south half of Maple Grove, we heard this comment quite regularly, and I went and consulted city legal, but because this portion of the street is not located within Claridge's subdivision, we do not have the ability to ask them to urbanize the south half as well. But they will be constructing all of the asphalt surface as well as including a sidewalk on the north side of it. I did pass this comment to city transportation for their consideration so it could be added to possible future city project. So next question is, will Stittsville Main Street extension be completed prior to construction of this subdivision? I think I went over that in the previous slide. The portion to the north will be completed as part of it, but not the portion to the west. The next one is a proposal lacks detail on blasting, grade change, and adequate transit. Again, some of these are gearing into the detailed design phase. So right now we're at the draft approval stage where they do show all of the large macro level grading plan as well as storm drainage, et cetera, et cetera. So you could always review those plans and let us know if you have any concerns. The next question is about how is stormwater managed for this site? Because one of the residents was concerned that potentially this will flow into the pond west of Stittsville, Maine. But stormwater is to flow to a pond located on city property next to the Carp River in the northeast corner of Hunmar Maple Grove. So it will not be flowing into the Stittsville main pond, and all of the water will be controlled on site. So next slide, please. Vincent, did you want to take the noise question?
Yeah, so yes, we will be removing trees, but the actual presence of houses and townhomes and buildings would actually mitigate the noise from the highway even more than trees. It's a bit of a misconception that trees mask noise. and the removal of wildlife habitat on site. So we've actually done all the reports up to city standards. We've done all the consultations with the Ministry of Resources and Forestry, and we've since got a letter of advice saying we don't need to do any more permitting. So with the recommendations of the report, we will be able to proceed on that basis.
And could you talk about the power and internet outage?
Yeah,
one of the
so
residents was worried about the potential outage as part of construction.
yeah, so like internet, power, these are all independent infrastructure that should be able to run independently without our site. So there shouldn't be any outages at all. I've never come across any outages because of construction. So unless it was a special case in a built-up neighborhood, in an infill neighborhood where you would maybe see an outage to connect, you won't see that here. And the construction traffic, assuming everyone's going to take Maple Grove to the site, we can install no construction traffic and then local roads if needed, but most of the construction traffic will be taking Maple Grove.
Okay, and we also received a comment about a possible multi-use pathway connection on the eastern edge of the subdivision connecting Maple Grove to the future park. And part of that is about the larger network of connection between John Woods to the future district park to the around the west side of Hunmar, a little bit to the northeast of this site. So I think this is something we can discuss a little further with Claridge. After I spoke with this residents, I did take a look at the broader context, and we will be trying to achieve a connection to the adjacent subdivision on 1919 Maple Grove between John Woods and the future district park. But it's also a good suggestion that I think we should explore. I will explore with Claridge about some possible pathway connection within their subdivision itself. I don't know, Vincent, did you want to elaborate?
Yeah, like whether it be there or through maybe a mid-block connection, we're definitely willing to reserve some land for that.
Okay, perfect. And will a second meeting be hosted following the second resubmission? So this meeting is the statutory public meeting for the subdivision itself. When a second submission is submitted, what I'll do is similar to what I've done before. I'll email everybody who's on the list with a new revised plan, but the city will not be hosting another separate meeting. Feel free to give me a phone call or send me an email with your comments, and I'll make sure to work on those with the developers. And lastly, what type of home is fronting on Maple Grove? I think it was shown in the rendering Robert was showing. It's single family homes fronting onto Maple Grove. And that goal is to keep existing like homes close to existing community to allow for a proper transition. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll turn it back to Charmaine.
Thank you so much, Stream. Thanks for that. So I hope that answered some of the questions that were relayed earlier. So we are now going to move into the question and answer portion of the session. We have about an hour. Just a reminder of some of the housekeeping rules. Please raise your hand, as Andy pointed out. If you can't, just wave and we'll get you that way. If you're on the telephone, if you do *9, that raises your hand on the phone. If you press *9, so that's one way of doing it as well. Please ask the question in your language of your choice. If you prefer French, please ask your question in French. We'll ensure that it's responded in French as well. And we'll just get started right now. So I first have, my first question is from Carol from Bryanston Gate. She registered to ask the first question beforehand. So we're going to start off with Carol. Carol, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I'm happy to see that we have a lot more
Carol, I'm finding it difficult hearing you. If you could just speak up a bit, please. Sorry.
All right. I'm quite happy to see that we've got a few issues discussed when it comes to traffic and where truck traffic will go during construction. What I'd like to address today is the option or the issue of cut-through traffic. In the original plan, when Street 6 entered the development, the new development, it went directly up to the Kanata West concept plan, to the Kanata West Main Street, would have passed plus or minus 5 houses. Now that the new revised plan opens directly across from Alon Street, we have, and without doubt, a huge problem with cut-through traffic for not only for the new development, but also for Bryanston Gate and Fairwinds. We're talking about traffic that's going to open up directly across from Alon Street and can take that road up and pass between 95 and 120 houses on a regular basis, should they choose to cut through that neighborhood and avoid traffic on Stittsville Main or on Maple Grove Road. Not only that, but in the development itself, you've gone from Street 6 that went directly through development and on the edge of the housing of 5 houses, and now you've routed your own internal traffic past by roughly 100 houses, and that doesn't include anything in the denser buildings. So how can you justify the change to Route 6, moving the opening of this access egress to directly oppose Alon Street and open us up to increased hazards of safety going by parks, by routes that are traveled on a walking path to school? I'd like to know, you say it was city staff who instigated this. I'm quite sure that the neighborhoods and the people of this group who've made these comments about cut-through traffic did not refer to cut-through traffic in 1981 Maple Grove, but rather referred to cut-through traffic in local neighborhoods.
Thank you, Carol. So the question is, how can you justify the change to the Route 6 and the cut-through traffic and the safety that goes along with that? Mike, would you speak to that, or would that go over to David, the consultant? Okay, Mike, thank you.
I think I'd like David to chime. Oh, he's still muted, but he's talking. Hold on, Dave.
I was trying to click on mute. There we go. Yeah, the decision to move the access was instigated by the city staff to align these local roads. It's usually city's preference to keep intersections lined up rather than have offset dogleg type configurations to avoid conflicting left turn movements. And so that is something that originally came from city staff in the revised layout of the subdivision. In terms of cut through traffic, Claridge has done their best to try to address that and by the means that they have in configuring their site, so that although it's difficult to do more off-site changes, the configuration within the site does make the tail end of that route, if you were to go from Kanata West Main Street all the way down to Hazel Dean, it does make that first and last bit a bit more convoluted. And so so I think they've addressed that in terms of the whole route. I wanted to also mention that since the last submission, or the original submission, there has been a number of other traffic calming measures that were implemented throughout Bryanston Gate, some flex posts and speed humps and photo radar speed limit signs, and so it's
which have
sort
been ineffective.
They have been.
They have been ineffective.
Oh, ineffective.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Okay, that's interesting to note. I don't know if through the city we can get some stats from the speed signs to see if what sort of data the speeds are pulling from there. Is that something we can pull, Mike?
Mike, is that something that the city can provide?
I believe that is possible, David. We can definitely have a conversation with our road safety group and possibly with area traffic management, who typically manage these traffic calming devices such as the speed humps, flex stakes, and we can get some actual hard data and see the effectiveness of those measures.
That would be good to take a look at to see how effective they are. Yeah.
Thank you. Carol, did that answer your question? Unmuted, please.
It was an answer. Does it answer my concerns? No.
No.
But it was an answer.
Thank you. Okay, the next, and just before, sorry, I should mention, this is being recorded. So the counselor has asked that this be recorded. It's not for any use other than the counselor can put it on his feed. And so people that aren't available tonight or this afternoon can listen in. And so that's the reason for it being recorded. So I apologize, I didn't mention that before. Okay, Chad, the question for Chad?
Yeah, thank you. I have a few, but I'm guessing we're going to do it one hand at a time. So I'll do one and then put my hand up again. Is that the process?
Yes, unless they're interrelated. Thanks, Chad.
Okay. Yep. I'm one of the houses that's on Denali Way that backs onto the development. So the back of my house is facing out, and my concern is somewhat related to the one that was just asked about a lawn, but mine's more about the Stittsville Main extension. And I appreciate it's been answered, but I would, well, answered. It was addressed, but I would like to bring it up here and maybe specifically for the counselor to hear. The previous counselor gave us in the neighborhood guarantees, which I appreciate now is nothing more than, I don't want to say an empty promise. It was probably well intentioned, but it doesn't actually hold any legal binding. But the comment at the time to our neighborhood was that the connection for Maple Grove through to Stittsville, Maine would not be connected until such time that the Stittsville Main was extended north to connect into that greater new interchange. And the reason for that, I think, is fairly obvious for those of us who live in the area, is that this becomes a bypass. There was a comment just made about cut through. It's sort of semantics, the language we use. But, you know, my comment, I think, in one of the emails was Johnswood Street used to be connected, and the sheer amount of traffic that went down there by people trying to cut you know, corners to get back to Hazeldean and into the older part of Stittsville more rapidly using Maple Grove and Johnswoods. If we extend Maple Grove through to Stittsville, Maine before that extension is done, this is just going to exacerbate that problem even more, in my opinion. And I think that contributes. I appreciate that our traffic folks are on here. The comment that was just brought up, I think, is a perfect example that it's not about traffic calming measures. It's about designing the road network such that there's no impetus for people to need to be cutting through residential neighborhoods as a shortcut. To me, it's fairly obvious that Stittsville, Maine should be extended and connected as the major route. I can't see the definition for what that was. Steen brought it up before. But that connection would alleviate all this traffic. There would be no benefit in using any of our neighborhoods as shortcuts anymore, because it wouldn't be a shortcut. So by doing these things in this order, I see it as a very big problem. But this is not a Claridge problem. This is a city problem, and prioritizing what looks to be less than a 1 kilometer piece of road. So I would ask, what can be done in that regard? Because 2026 to 2031, depending on when this neighborhood is done, is to me just completely unsatisfactory. Of course, what can I do about it? So maybe that's just an empty comment. And just the combined comment on that, with the Maple Grove extension, the comment that the south side is not the responsibility of Claridge. I accept that. That makes total sense. It falls on the city. But again, my lack of faith here is that what is my backyard and what is a heavily trafficked pedestrian way right now gets consolidated down to a thin sidewalk, and we are left with weeds and wild grasses and just a bloody mess on that side. And I feel bad for the Claridge residents that will have to look out at their front doors to that. What can we do to expedite the city's handling of the south side of Maple Grove, so it's not just, like I said, a wild mess for that, what is probably only 300 feet? Thank you. That's my questions for those parts.
Okay. Thank you, Chad. So who would like to take that? Councillor, would you like to make a remark?
Yeah, I'm not sure where to begin, because Chad brought up a number of issues. And Chad, one thing that stood out for me in your comments that is absolutely correct is not all of these transportation issues are Claridge's to solve. A lot of the sequencing and budget and timing of road infrastructure in our communities is definitely on the city. And we have a big problem in the city where many of our major transportation projects, not just in Stittsville, but in Kanata, Barrhaven, Orleans, Innis, all over the place, are lagging very far behind. I won't get into the details right now as to why that is, but it is a problem. In terms of the south side of Maple Grove Road, Claridge is not required legally to build it. I'm still going to ask Claridge, when we meet offline after this meeting, if that's something they'll consider, or if there's a way to cost share. Just because they're not legally required doesn't mean it's necessarily off the table, and that's something that I want to pursue with Claridge to find out what the cost is. And because I do agree, if we put it on the city's list of projects, it could be quite a few years before that actually gets done, and maybe there's an opportunity here to accelerate that. I also want to look into, with the traffic engineers from the city and from the applicant, about some of the modeling that's being used to predict what the traffic flow becomes. It's because there's a number of ways that vehicles could go to get into or out of this neighborhood. As it's proposed now, they could be going down Stittsville Main Street. They could be going down Maple Grove to Huntmar. They could be going down Alon Street. There's 3 different ways. Alon via John Woods. There's 3 different ways to get to Hazeldean Road. I think we have to look at how all those roads are configured, where there's bottlenecks right now, where there's solutions to meet those bottlenecks, where there might be mitigations through signage or enforcement or infrastructure to prevent some of the cut through traffic. So I think we need to take a look at the modeling and understand really what the impacts are going to be. Look at the data and look at what's likely to happen and make the best decision on the sequencing and how we move forward on this one.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Chad, did that response satisfy your question?
Yeah, for the most part. I would just, one follow-up to the councillor's comment there is part of that road modeling. I would ask that what is also considered, and again, he lives in the neighborhood, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about. For the folks in the more southern part of Stittsville, once that connection is made, the weekend shopping at Costco and Tanger, all of those people are going to, instead of going down Hazeldean and all those traffic lights and the added volume there, I think what you'll see, and we saw it with the old Johns Woods, is they will continue down Stittsville Main to what is that new curve, and this long straight drag strip of Maple Grove is going to become that bypass. So if those numbers could be included in there, I don't know how you do it, but I think we can all be very logical and understand that that's exactly what is going to happen as soon as that connection's made. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Over to the councillor.
There we go. Thank you, Charmaine. One thing I also wanted to mention, because it comes up a lot, not just in our ward, but others, about things that may have been promised by previous councils or councillors. I want to remind residents all the time that these are multi-million-dollar projects that are approved by city council, not by individual councillors. I'm always very careful about what I can or can't promise, and I would be very wary of anyone who promises you that they can sequence, projects that are tens of millions of dollars ahead of other ones. It's looking into a crystal ball, which none of us can really do. I want to make sure we get the right transportation and that we are making sure we understand the traffic impacts before anything gets approved. But I'm not going to stand here today and promise you that Stittsville Main will be built in the next 1 year or 2 years, or that Robert Grant will be built. I can tell you I'm working on it. It's something I work on every day with my team, and it's a top priority. But I can't at this point promise a project that has a lot of different moving pieces still. But it's something we're working on, and we know it's important for residents, and it's important for me too.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, next question is David.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Great. So I will just, I'll also echo what Carol said about traffic calming being ineffective, and also what Chad said about traffic calming is really just more kind of a failure. It's throwing good money after bad, maybe. Anyway, it's a failure of the bigger picture. Nobody drives through a neighborhood, unless the main road is too clogged or the main road isn't built yet. So both of those were, I think, spot on. My question And I was looking for clarification on exactly when Stittsville, Maine was going to be opened all the way through, both along the stretch to Maple Grove and also out to the 417. And I think I'm realizing, like, I listened to the presentation and it wasn't clear in my brain, and I just assumed that I wasn't getting it. But I think what I'm hearing is that nobody really knows. It's in the plan sort of over the next 10 years. It's a question of really who's going to pay for it and what chunks. So then maybe you could clarify that if I've just misunderstood. But then my specific question is, you talked about the northern section of Stittsville, Maine being open first. I think we can all see that's currently under construction. What does that actually connect to? What is the purpose of opening that if the subsequent chunk all the way down to Jackson Trails is not opened all the way, which is sort of what we're all agreeing is sort of the ultimate goal here for that road? That northern part, what does it connect to? Does it connect to this new development that's being proposed here, and thus these residents would be able to go out to the 417 and Tanger and all the rest that way? Or does that have some other purpose? And so wrap that into addressing the timeliness of Stittsville, Maine being opened all the way through the 417 as a whole. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, David. So Stream, will you take that question?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. So first question is about the connection between Stittsville, Maine and Maple Grove.
Yep.
And it's to be done as part of this development. So once I finish my my blurb, Vincent can talk about what his projected timeline is for the development, and that will be when that connection is made. The second question is about the northerly half of Stittsville, Maine, north of the site, between this site and 195 Hotmar. So everyone knows the 195 Hotmar site is undergoing construction. So it's quite a big subdivision over there, and they're constructing in different phases. So I know the first phase doesn't include this segment of the road, but eventually in the fullness of time, you know, the whole 195 Hotmar is going to be built out up here, and the subdivision for Maple Grove is going to be here. So once 195 Hotmar is built out and that segment of Stittsville, Maine is completed, the residents will be able to go through 195 Hotmar to get to the highway. So I hope that answers the question, and maybe Vincent can talk a little bit about timeline.
Yeah, over to you, Vincent.
Yeah, so depending on city approvals, if we get our draft approval in the next few months, we'd be jumping into detailed design for the sewers and roads. That typically takes, you know, another couple months, and we'd be servicing probably next summer if everything goes well, and house construction later that year or the next year. So 2021, 2022 is what we're looking at for housing construction.
Okay, thank you. David, did that answer your questions?
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is Catherine.
Hi, it's Catherine speaking. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Catherine.
Okay. Just a couple of things I wanted to bring up, and thank you everybody for this presentation. One issue concerns when all of this is going to happen. I happen to be in charge of hundreds of millions of dollars in federal COVID-related programming on a national level, and it's something that I have to do from my home. And I'm told that there won't be any access to federal buildings and whatever, especially in our case. I don't know about every federal building, but certainly in my case, for at least another year or two. Now, when this started, when I started working on this, which was the beginning of COVID around sort of late February, early March, it was a challenge, you know, because there's been blasting going on and there's a lot of traffic and construction going on while, you know, I'm on daily meetings throughout the day with ministers and stakeholders and industry and whatnot. So I don't know, for those of us who have to work from home, I don't know what this is going to be like when all of this starts. The other thing too is that I don't know to what extent there will be a change in street parking, because it's already fairly dangerous. There's a lack of visibility for those of us on Maple Grove when there's parking on one side of Maple Grove. Often large trucks and SUVs parked along there So trying to get in and out of our driveways without being hit by oncoming traffic. I happen to be near Huntmar, on Maple Grove, but near Huntmar. And I find it very, very difficult to see traffic coming in both directions as things stand now. So with the addition of housing, you know, more housing and more traffic, and then the opening of the end of Maple Grove to Stittsville, Maine, I can't imagine how many vehicles are going to be coming through there and down Maple Grove to Huntmar. And I know that the current traffic signage to sort of mitigate this, you know, the speed at which cars tend to go down the road, up and down the road. I know that's not working, but there's also the added issue of just sheer visibility because of street parking. So I don't know if, I mean, I think that realistically street parking is going to have to be removed with all of these additional homes and traffic.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. So 2 questions there. One, the first one being working from home and the challenging ways will come with the noise that construction does bring with it. And then the second question is, will there be a change in the street parking? So for the first question, in regards to the noise, Vincent, you spoke about the noise being within the city bylaws. Do you want to speak again to that, please?
Yeah, like, I mean, noise won't start before 7 a.m. like we're allowed. We'll be within our rights to start construction at 7 up until 10 p.m. So I sympathize with you and I hear you. I mean, it's definitely uncharted territories what we're dealing with here, and everyone's at home, and it's even harder when there's banging and blasting. But at the end of the day, it's within our right to do this construction, and it will happen. And like Stream said, projects like these bring revenue to the city to build Stittsville, Maine North and other projects. So I sympathize with you, but yeah, it will be a bit intrusive, like all construction is.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it will, absolutely, the noise. The next question is change in street parking. Who would like to speak to that? Mike or David? Mike?
As far as I know, we have no intention of limiting or restricting parking on Maple Grove. And David, correct me if I'm wrong. We typically use street parking as a method of traffic calming. In fact, we use it quite often in the city. So I don't want people to drive faster on Maple Grove, and I do want to keep the parking. But if David does his analysis and sees that parking can be removed for whatever reason, I'm definitely open to it.
Okay. David, comment?
Yeah, I was thinking more along like what Mike was saying, is that the removal of on-street parking tends to open up the road and result in faster speeds, which is the opposite of what we want to achieve here. I understand and I can totally visualize the issue that was stated, and so perhaps maybe I would ask the city to check or the bylaw to check if the parking is infringing on the 1.5 meters from the driveway. Maybe it's blocking visibility in that way in this particular circumstance. But generally, those bylaw requirements take visibility into account. So I think it is something that maybe the city should look into. If of course, it could be exacerbated by higher traffic volumes. But I think if it's an issue existing right now, then it should be dealt with.
Okay, thank you, David. And that'll be noted, and Mike will bring that back to his colleagues in transportation planning. Thank you. Catherine, I'm certain that probably not much comfort when you're working from home in the noise. So I do agree with Vincent. It's unfortunate the circumstances that we find ourselves in now, and so I do empathize with you. Did those answer your questions?
Well, I just wanted to comment about the, parking helping to reduce the speed of traffic. It actually doesn't. And when you have a hill there, I mean, it takes me a long time to get out of my driveway simply because people don't see me and I don't see them. And it doesn't matter how slow they're going, they come within seconds of hitting any vehicle trying to get out of a driveway. That's just the reality. It has nothing to do with doing 30 or 40 or 50 miles an hour. And I think this is something that I brought up with the city, that people, I don't know, I guess unless you live on the street and you live at that spot, and you know, you can't empathize or you can't visualize it. And I've been within seconds of being hit actually every day. And it doesn't really matter what time I leave the driveway, what time I leave the home. It's often in the evening, and you know, it's still very dangerous. So you know, I have to admit I'm rather unsatisfied with that response. But you know, what can I do?
Well, thank you, Catherine. I will ask Mike to take that back to transportation planning in regards to not only parking on the street, but also the visibility from people leaving their driveway. So thank you for that comment, and Mike will take that back. So thank you. Next question is Fred.
Hi. First comment I'd like to make is that I agree with the comment Carol made at the beginning, that the traffic calming measures have no impact and are kind of a waste of time and money from my perspective, from what I've seen. The question I have, when I looked at the previous plan, there seemed, that had 6 streets, there seemed to be 3 streets that exited onto the Main Street West extension. At this point, and when I'm looking at the plan on the screen, which is difficult to see the details, it appears as though there are no streets from the proposed subdivision that exit onto the Main Street West extension. As such, the Main Street West extension will do nothing in terms of, from what I can see, for traffic congestion. I see traffic coming down straight out of that subdivision down Avalon onto Johnwood, and I don't see them going to necessarily up to Huntmar or down Stittsville, Maine. I see it, the easiest way is straight down Avalon, and I see nothing in the plan that with the Main Street West extension, with no streets from what I can see going out, exiting onto that. I see that extension doesn't do anything to relieve the issue in terms of cut through traffic down Avalon Street.
Thanks. So I thought it might be helpful, David, we put up slide 20. And if you could speak to that, maybe that would help as you go through to answer Fred's question. Is this the correct slide? Would that be helpful to refer to as he's referring to the different exits from the traffic pattern?
No, if you could scroll up to one of the earlier,
Okay, so maybe
the one that
12.
shows the proposed development.
Yeah.
It's 2 down from that one.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
So just keep going down. Scroll
Slide
down a little
22.
bit more. Yep, that one.
There you go. Thanks for your patience. Sorry about that. Very difficult to see.
Okay.
Can you
So,
circle?
oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna, I'm asking in the room if they can circle what if that would be helpful, if they circle the different spots that you speak to.
Oh, well, I think it should be pretty easy to understand. The main street that connects down to Maple Grove opposite Avalon Street is the question. That traffic would just continue straight across down through Avalon and work its way through the neighborhood down to Hazeldean. I don't, based on our analysis of travel patterns in the area, I would tend to respectfully disagree with that it would occur in that manner, with Stittsville Main Street only a few hundred meters to the west, providing a direct route to the core of Stittsville, and in the other direction, with Maple Grove going to the east, that those higher order roads with a greater capacity and higher speeds would likely be the preferable route for most people. I acknowledge that some traffic may continue to work its way through the neighborhood, but I think that would be, a nominal amount when there are connections to higher order roads within nearby proximity.
Okay, Stream.
Fred, I just wanted to add that you were talking about the 3 previous connections to Stittsville Main Street on the website on the west side. I know this plan is quite difficult to see, but there's still actually 2 connections to Stittsville Main Street on the north side. The west and north side are part of the same road, so in the fullness of time, when this whole road gets developed, there's still 2 connections to Stittsville Main Street. And the reason we try to cut down on the previous 4 connection into 2 is just to help reduce points of conflict between streets. So just rest assured, there's still 2 connections to Stittsville Main Street, and Maple Grove is not the only exit.
Thank you for that clarification, Stream. Fred?
So I think what I'm hearing is what I assumed or what I thought is that there is no planned connection or exit from the subdivision onto the Stittsville Main West extension. There may be exits to the Stittsville Main North, but there is nothing now for the no connection to the Stittsville Main West extension.
Thank you, Fred.
I just wanted that to be confirmed, because I've heard people say, oh, well, they'll go to Maple Grove. Oh, well, they'll go to the north. But my question was, have you removed all exits from that subdivision onto the Stittsville Main West extension? That's what it appears to me, and that's what I want confirmed.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Stream?
So yes, your comment is correct. They removed the access onto Stittsville Main at the west side of the subdivision. But just going again, this whole street is one single street. So whether there's point connecting on the north side or the west side, this is the same street that they're exiting onto. It's just a matter of exiting a little earlier versus a little bit later.
Thank you. Okay, I see your hand up, Carol. We'll get you. I've got a few more people in the queue, but I'll get back to you. Don't worry. Okay, thank you, Fred. Next is Ian. Ian, you're good to go.
Hi. I'm just kind of thinking that we're heading towards a perfect storm on Maple Grove, and not in a good way. And that this is about one of 4 developments that are all accessing the sort of the same side of Maple Grove. This is the farthest west, but there's 2 more to the east, and then there's 1 right at the main intersection. And I'm starting to be concerned that if we keep looking at these individually with traffic patterns and such, we're going to think that we're going to be okay. And I'm thinking that there's 2 phases of concern I have in travel. One is the construction phase, which is multi-year, big trucks. And then we have the actual residents, which basically they'll decide, like anything else, which way they're going to kind of go. One of the questions I have is, I'm wondering that with all the construction coming along this road, this probably precludes the traffic calming of the flex strips in the middle of the road, because I know what it is like now with all the parking and that. It is sort of a bit of a zigzag to make it, and I can't see the big dump trucks and all that going. So that basically means, I would say, in the length of the construction going along this road, which again is going to be multi-years, each summer we will not be putting back the flex strips, simply just because they won't last. One good run with the trucks and they're going to be done. So I'm kind of wondering if we could factor into this how we see this road progressing over the next 5 to 7 years as all this construction is planned, because this is in a certain phase going forward. Others, one of them, I think one of the plans is sort of, we don't know when they're going to kind of make their next proposal and so on. And we have a kind of an end. And I really think there should be sort of a mixture. And I think this is more going to be on the city, because it said you have various developers. Because I don't believe any of the developers are the same in any of the, anyone's kind of looked at. So I really would kind of hope that we could take a look at that and look at it when we're considering where we're going to go for the short term and then for the long term in this area, because it's going to be a mess. And unfortunately, the concern about noise I see is just going to get multiplied, because it's basically, we're going to have lots of dirt and travel and all that sort of stuff. And it's going to be kind of a messy place to be.
Thank you, Ian, for that question. So I think what I heard, and I heard that there is many developments happening right now along Maple Grove. Is someone taking into account all the different developments and the impacts of the different developments, especially when there are different developers? So I think that would be, I look to Stream or Mike to answer that. First, Stream, over to you.
Sure. I know that, so we have a team of transportation engineers in the city under Mike, and I know that they're well aware of all of the projects on the go in this segment of Maple Grove. And every time there's a transportation impact assessment come in, they would tell them to, look at what's the impact of all the other developments in this area. So we do look at this in a comprehensive angle. I do hear from you that, it's definitely a pain to live in a construction zone. I think I had somebody outside doing bell fiber and it drove me crazy just in a 2-week period. Like, I definitely empathize with you. The only problem is we don't have a way of controlling when developer choose to proceed with the project. However, before they start construction, we do always ask them to do a construction management plan, just to show the route of the truck, the layout. And I know the councilor has been getting into a habit of telling them to do a pre-construction meeting, just so even to one of the residents' earlier comment, although we can't control it, but we can make sure we communicate it well, so you know what you're expecting coming down the line. So I'm sorry, it's not an answer you want to hear, but I just thought I'd chime in.
Thank you, Stream. Mike?
Thanks, Stream. That's actually really well said. And I agree with Stream. I agree with the resident that we should definitely look at things long term. And through our traffic studies, we typically take into account any proposed developments that we're aware of course, as background traffic. Unfortunately, as Stream says, we can't control their timelines. Their timelines can change. They can go, they can go on hold. They can take a while. Sometimes they come in sooner. So it's a bit tricky. There's some moving parts, some unknowns, and it's just that's why traffic modeling is it's modeling. It's based on probability and statistics, and we do our best to make sure that these things are taken into account long term and short term.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Ian?
Yeah, so I guess I just want to focus on, my 2 comments. One is, part of the traffic analysis I wish to look at is during the construction time period, not just in the residence time period. So in other words, it can sort of be factored. And 2, whether you can answer it now or it could be answered later, is, does this basically mean that the traffic during the periods of construction that's going to be going on, will the traffic calming process of the flex poles have to be removed from Maple Grove just due to the size of the vehicles moving along it, which basically means that for, let's say, up to 5 years, basically there will no longer be traffic calming just because of the larger volume of the larger size of vehicles traveling along that route.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. I'll ask Mike to take that back to his colleagues in transportation planning who deal with the traffic management, and we'll get back to you on that. Mike, does that sound agreeable? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, the next question is for Lorianne.
Hi. So first I want to say thank you, Chad. That was a really good question regarding the, current vegetation status of the south part of Maple Grove. I mean, there's two things with that, not just the vegetation, but it's the longer that's delayed, the longer the trees will get planted along there and provide any kind of barrier long term. So, the sooner we can get that going, the better. Going back to Catherine's concern about working from home. I live like literally right across from Maple Grove. So both the level of noise, the blasting, if there's any, right now with the current projects, our house shakes and it's like there's an earthquake going on. So I really hope there's not going to be blasting right across the street that close, because I mean, I can't imagine the damage it would do. The other thing is about the air quality around the dust and stuff. I'm asthmatic and I'm allergic to dust and stuff. And the statements about weekly street cleaning didn't really address my concern. Some places, they keep the roads that they're driving back and forth watered to keep the dust down. So I'm just wondering if they're even considering those types of things, or are we all expected to just hide in our houses with all the windows shut while this construction is going on?
Thank you, Lorianne. So 3 questions there. I think the one is in agreement with Chad about Maple Grove piece across about and I think the councillor spoke to that he'll have some conversations about that piece. The next question was, or a statement about working from home and the difficulties from that in this situation, and how we go forward with that piece. I think that is noted from everyone that has to be working from home in these difficult times. But I think the question that I want to pose to Vincent is about the air quality concerning the dust. What measures will be put in place? Vincent, over to you.
Yeah, so you mentioned watering the streets, and that's something we can definitely do. On the drier days, we can spray our stone piles, we can spray the streets, spray anything that's really emitting dust, and we'll do our best. I mean, on a construction site, it's always going to be a bit dusty, a bit noisy, but we will do our best to mitigate those things. And again, if Glenn wants to have a pre-construction meeting, we could definitely do that and kind of communicate on what we can do and your concerns. But on top of that, there's nothing much you can really do to mitigate the noise. So, but for the dust, we'll definitely do our due diligence and see if we can get weekly or twice a week water trucks, sweepers, everything like that. So.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. So I think that pre-construction meeting is very important. I know that the councillor does those pre-construction meetings. So councillor, I assume that you would be doing those construction meetings prior to the construction in this development, if it goes forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we find is useful to keep people informed, let you know about construction schedules, about potential impacts, about traffic. Also, so people have a point of contact, a direct number whenever we can to the contractor in case there's issues. But that's getting ahead of ourselves right now because this is still in the review stage. We're not even at a approval stage yet. So.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Lorianne, I'm probably sure that didn't really answer your...
Well, there is one more thing. When Stream was talking, he was talking about, or somebody was talking to the construction noise at the bullet points, and they indicated the bylaw normal times of construction being 7 to 5:30. But then I heard Vincent talk later about it going to 10 p.m. And I'm just wondering why the difference, and who's right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so who has the answer to that? Is it, okay, Vincent, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, that was me both times. Typical work hours are 7 to 5:30, but the bylaw is 7 to 10 for construction noise, Monday to Friday. But no, we won't be working till 10. Sorry about that.
So what I'm hearing is that you'd be allowed to work till 10, but what you're saying is your usual operations is 7 to 5:30.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Lorianne. Okay, the next is a phone number. And so I apologize. I'll just do the last digits, 5953. You're good to go.
Hello?
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 Good to go. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I'm on a speakerphone on my phone here.
So,
what I wanted to say is I was actually very impressed with the original draft. And having said that, going back to what the very first caller was commenting on in regard to the original street number 6 location, I was impressed with that, just because to have street 6 coming out of the new proposed subdivision onto Maple Grove offset some distance away from the end of Alon Street, I thought was a rather good idea. That is obviously I think would discourage cut-through traffic. I've seen the revised layout, and it's almost like 2 subdivisions within one. But there will be cut-through traffic on Allen, and there's no way in predicting just how much. But once again, I was very impressed with the original location of Street 6 running right through the subdivision on the east side. And the other reason why I was impressed with that is simply there could be then a multi-purpose pathway. I would personally call it like a green link running along the east side of that Road 6, right all the way from Maple Grove up to the proposed park, which for whatever reason, well actually I know the reason, but the proposed park, which is up at the northeast corner of the proposed site. Multi-purpose pathway could then go along the south side of Maple Grove from John Wood's pathway over to Stittsville Main Extension, and we'd be connecting 3 communities with a multi-purpose pathway, and with Street 6 in the original location, we wouldn't have direct cut-through traffic. Now, my understanding months ago was I guess the traffic engineer with the city had a concern where 2 intersections would be too near to one another on Maple Grove, the Street 6 and the Alon Street intersection. But honestly, all it would require where Street 6 was originally going to come out to would be a 3-way stop. Then there's no concern. And so I'd like to see Street 6 back where it was, and that provides better access to the park block in the northeast corner. Okay, and
Thank you. Before you go on, sir, can you just tell me your name?
Yeah, sure, I'm Dave.
Dave, okay, thanks, Dave. I just didn't want to call you your last few digits of your phone number. So Dave, what I've heard is that you would like it to be considered to go back to the original Street 6, and so that's that's feedback that the team will receive and look into. So thank you for that. Do you have an additional question? You have to mute yourself. Dave, are you still there? Okay. Dave, here you go. Okay, sorry, Dave. There was a connectivity problem. So, do you have another question?
Well, as I'm trying to say, Street 6 was fine. I think the way it was. If there was a three-way stop at Maple Grove, that would be that would mean there should be a non-issue with intersections in close proximity. The other thing that there's two other things that I'm hearing, and I have a huge concern about the weed growth along the south side of Maple Grove. It's like overgrowing the 6-foot fence behind our houses. And what I'm thinking is if the developer is obligated to turn the north side of the boulevard into an urban cross section, then the city should, at the same time, when the storm sewers and everything are being put in, do the south side, and that's a cost-effective approach, because what we have now along the south side of the right-of-way is a total absolute mess. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dave, for those comments, and that's something we've heard several times from residents, is about that the look of that south side of Maple Grove, and I think the councillor will be having some conversations about that, and the other piece has been noted. So thank you so much for your comments. Okay, our next, our final question. I think Carol had something that she wanted to wrap up with. Am I right, Carol? So we'll go to Tanya right now. Tanya, you're on. Press.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hi.
you're good to go. Hi.
I apologize if I missed it earlier. I didn't really have a chance to go through the revised submission, but I was just wondering if there's going to be a period of time where the access point onto Maple Grove is going to be the only access point once residents move into the new development, and if so, how long that might be the case.
Okay, so who would like to answer that? About the access point, Vincent, over to you. Thank you.
There might be, but it's probably unlikely, just because the developer to the north has an appetite to construct that road probably at the same time as us. So we're hoping that we'd be building it, either us or them, in a shared way, and that would provide access further to the east.
Thank you. Tanya, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Carol, did you have another question, or was it answered? Carol?
It was, there were just a couple of comments that I wanted to go through that were observations going through. So when people are talking about noise and construction, in fact, the whole point of noise isn't just with the construction traffic or the blasting. It has to do with the actual noise from traffic and surrounding streets and the sheer traffic levels in that area. I believe when I was reading the submissions that there are going to have to be noise statements, noise clauses within the property agreements for those people who front on Maple Grove Road, and previously for the people who were to live along the Stittsville Main Street extension. Now, we don't have any updated documents on noise on those now that you've changed the locations of the housing, but I'd be interested to see that. But certainly the number of the housing and the areas along Maple Grove Road are already subjected to higher levels of noise at any time, not even considering construction. Furthermore, the environmental or the geophysical examinations and reports state that this is a complete, and all of us who live here realize that this is a complete area of bedrock, and there is absolutely no doubt that there will be blasting. So I don't think we should say if there's blasting. I think we have to come right up front and say to people, there is going to be blasting. This is solid bedding side between the west and south side of that property. So there will be blasting in this area. And finally, with the changes and the fact that there are no access egress points out on the south, on the west side of this property now, will there be sidewalks constructed along that area for the residents who will live there for the approximately minimum 5 to 10 years before Kanata West Main Street is extended?
Thank you. Thanks, Carol. So the one point about the noise piece, the bedrock and the blasting, I think that's a noted. And then the access points, will there be sidewalks? So who would like to take the noise one? Stream? Someone help me?
Sure, yeah, I can briefly speak to it. So I think the problem is that Maple Grove is designated as a collector road. And whenever you have a collector road or an arterial road, it's very typical, obviously because the volume of traffic is a little bit higher, there's more noise. So there's noise statements attached to those, and that's mainly more of a liability reason and just buyer beware kind of clause that the developer likes to put into these subdivision agreements. So we do see them very frequently, and the difference is, if your house is fronting onto it, then typically you would just have the statement. And if your house is, for example, backing onto Stittsville Main, then there's different areas. There might be some noise wall constructed by the developer for those homes. The other question about blasting, I think Vincent, you will likely agree there will be some blasting as part of this. So I don't think we need to. I think Claridge agrees. So I saw him nod, so we can take that. And the last question about sidewalk on Stittsville Main Street. Are you talking about the western part of Stittsville Main Street that will extend up? So okay, so right now the city is actually undertaking a environmental assessment for that portion of Stittsville Main Street. And that's the first process that the city would take before they build a road. So rest assured, we definitely know the issue and we're getting on top of it. So through that environmental assessment process, it will identify all of the infrastructure as well as any active transportation infrastructure that's going to be part of the road. I can speak from experience that for the 195 Hunmar subdivision to the north, the portion of Stittsville Main Street there, which is classified as a major collector, will have sidewalk on both sides of it, as well as off-street bike paths. So there will be these facilities embedded in the road. In terms of timeline, again, this portion of Stittsville Main Street on the west side is a city project. So it really depends on the timing for the transportation master plan, as well as city long-term budget. But we do have an environmental process ongoing right now, and you can make comments that way. I can send you some contact information offline.
Good. Thank you, Stream. We've come to the end. It's 5:30. I do notice that Dave has his hand up. If it's something burning that hasn't been answered already, Dave, we'll let you have the final question. Over to you, Dave.
I didn't quite get an answer. Is it doable? Is it still possible to put Street 6 back where it was originally proposed to be, and at the same time not extend Elon Street? Yes or no?
What the answer to that was, Dave, is that they have to take that back and look at it. That's feedback, and thank you for that feedback. Right now, it wouldn't be something that they'd be in the position to answer. So that will be something that the team will take back. So thank you for that. Okay, so thank you very much. This is the end of our question and answer period. I'd like to thank you all for attending this afternoon, and I'd like to thank Stream for always doing such a great job in presenting, and I'd like to thank Vincent, who is on the hot seat, and David, Robert, and Greg for attending as well, and then also Mike, and to the crew in my room here helping us with the virtual session. I'll just hand it over to the councillor to do some closing remarks. Councillor?
Yeah, thanks very much, Charmaine. I've been taking notes throughout this. Somebody mentioned midway through that I live nearby, and I do. I know this site very well. I often walk by with my dog or bike by, and I've seen that development sign up there for a couple years. I think probably most residents on this call would have learned something new. I certainly learned a few new things on the call today as well, and I've got a number of things that I want to follow up with staff on. There's some advantages and some disadvantages to that opening of Maple Grove to Stittsville Main Street. Something that didn't come up directly was transit and OC Transpo. I know OC Transpo right now, they use the turnaround at the end of the existing Stittsville Main to sort of start their buses, but it's a really inefficient way to run the route. One of the advantages to opening Maple Grove to Stittsville, Maine is to have a more efficient route for express buses and other buses going down there. On the other hand, a disadvantage would be sending more traffic down Stittsville Main Street in front of the St. Stephen's School. There's an area where I hear quite often from parents who are concerned about kids crossing Stittsville, Maine. So there's advantages and disadvantages no matter which streets open and when they open. So we have a lot of work to do to understand the impacts, positive and negative, to all of the affected communities here. I want to thank Charmaine and Andy for all they've done to organize this session. There's a lot of work that goes into organizing these things. Thank you to the team from Claridge and your consultants as well. And most of all, thank you to residents. We're going over 90 minutes here and you've taken some time out of your busy days. This is how we get to a better community. It's by participating. So thank you to everybody who took the time to tune in, to ask questions. And you can continue to ask questions and share your feedback using the links on the screen, as well as you can send me an email and I will share that with city staff as well. So thank you to everyone. And this will be going up on my YouTube channel probably later this evening or first thing tomorrow morning. And I'll share a link out through my email newsletter and website as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And as the Councillor mentioned, there's how to provide additional input. We still have the comment sheet. You could do it for 2 days after post this meeting. At any time, please reach out to Stream via email, or you can call him as well. And as the Councillor mentioned, he's also willing to take some feedback. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for spending the time. You know, I'm always very privileged, and now I feel like I'm in your home to spend this time. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has a nice evening and take care and stay safe. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.